Welcome back to another episode of You're in Charge Now What? I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and today I am joined by Ed Roberts. He is the COO of Bozard Ford Lincoln. He's been a veteran in the automotive industry, and I'm very excited. The reason why I wanted to bring him aboard is he has released a new book called Mile One, Endless Journey to Effective Leadership. Really phenomenal book, and we're going to dive into that today and his journey. Ed, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Glenn. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Great. So let's just jump right in. Why write this book now? I mean, you like I said, if I've seen your journey, I've known you in the industry for a while, but why was it pressing on you to write this book now?
Glenn, I've been asked that question a few times, and I've been pressured I've been in the business for 30 something years now. I've been pressured for the last 20. You should write a book. You should write a book. And at first I said that'll never happen.
Right.
And then finally, over the last 10 years, I started taking some notes. I said, maybe I'll hire a ghostwriter or something at some point or whatever. And I was driving in my car late December last year, listening to a book that a friend of mine wrote. And it just hit me. It was time. And I've been told that before. When it hits you, and it did. It hit me, and I pushed pause and called my friend and says, "Clint, you've inspired me to write a book." And then just started reflecting back on the notes and putting it together and built a framework of what it was. And then after that, it was off to the races, and it came together pretty easy.
Yeah, I've been very lucky over the last year. I've been doing this now for a couple of years, but over the last year, authors have reached out to me, outside of automotive as well. And I've asked them about that. And there was a gentleman named Eric Bishop. He was just on recently a second time, and he just released another book. And he said, all of us writers or people who want to write have a lot of folders somewhere with a lot of ideas, and things get started until all of a sudden, like you just said, there's a purpose, there's something. And once you start to lock in a discipline of writing, where you say, even if it's an hour a day, whatever, like you said, it starts to flow, but you have to be in the right space. You can't force it. So why Mile One? What's the relevance of the title?
Mile One has been a sort of a mantra for me for ever since I got in the business. And a lot of us don't see things differently than what they are now. And there's very few visionaries in the world that see things differently than what they are. And Steve Jobs was certainly one of those. Elon certainly one. And what we are as humans, we see what's in front of us. We see what we see, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. So that I can give several examples, but one clear example is if we run a marathon, and not too many of us are going to do that, but some of us choose to.
Right.
We can't see that last mile when we start that run, but what we can see is what's in front of us. And in life, that's all we can work on is what's in front of us.
Right.
And so every opportunity or everything that we have in front of us is that next step. It's that next thing we need to be working on. And with everything else, it doesn't matter what we did. It matters what we're doing. So every step is that next mile one. As long as we're chasing that next step that we need to be working on. If we're in that marathon, mile one, and then the next mile is mile one, and the next mile is mile one. And then in that marathon, there is a finish line, but in life, there's not. It's an ongoing journey. So it's breaking things down to what can I do next to make an impact.
See, I like that. And reading your book, I told you before we started taping that what I really love about the book, and those of you who are listening, I highly recommend getting this book because it's you keep it very clear, very simple. The chapters are shorter, and then at the end of it, you give, I call it homework, but I think you give the readers a pause to say, what did you learn? Let's focus on this. And so even in your book, you've broken it down into pieces. And I like that analogy. A few other authors have used that same analogy of saying, instead of saying I have to run 26 miles or 26.3, focus on this mile and then focus on that. Now you have your path. So for leaders, for a lot of our audience are newer leaders. So it all sounds good to focus on what's in front of you. But how would you recommend, or what would you tell them to say, how do they break down a project or a goal or activities so that they know what this next step is, but where it's going to lead to, if that makes sense.
You got to have the end in mind. You got to know where you're going. So there has to be some level of vision there, but to break it down to the steps to get to that, it is key to getting started. A lot of times we have so many things on our plate,
Right.
don't know where to start. Well, that's what Mile One does for you as well. It's that next thing you need to work on. If we was to purchase a new point and we needed to build a facility, we needed to hire the staff. Well, I'm probably not going to hire the valets before I hire the meat and potatoes of what I need from a from a leadership standpoint.
Right.
I want to chase the one that will build the team down. So that would be my next step is let me find someone that's ready to build a team and then value the same values that we have here or embrace the same values that we have here. And so no matter where you're at, and I specifically tried to write the book in a way to where it doesn't matter whether you're in the automotive industry or not. You can reflect
Right.
back and say, how can I put this into use with what I do? And in doing so, it breaks, you can take the moments to reflect it into each chapter and say, okay, well, how does that fit my business? And how can I
Mhm.
change that? And that's the opportunity where you really get something from it. Because reading something, we all look at something, we read it, we think, okay, that's almost the Bible. We all feel that way with it. So we can hear something 10 times, but when we read it in a book, we feel like it has more value to it.
Right.
But then being able to put it into action where I'm saying, hey, let's go back and do something with that. And
Right.
that's where I hope to make the impact.
No, and what I like about that, and I agree because, I have children who are in high school now. My oldest has just started college. And when they're working through reading a book, they're taking notes and they're going to be tested on it. And for all of us, once we stop, meaning that we're not being tested anymore, we stop, we'll read it, but we don't highlight. Some people do. We're not taking notes. We're not really methodically. We're reading it, and you can say, "Well, I read Ed's book, and well, what did you take out of it? What are you going to apply?" What I like about what you were saying is this can apply to you as a leader for yourself. Here's my vision, and I have a goal, and then you reverse engineer. Well, what are the steps to accomplish that? But more importantly, I think that's such a great skill because when you're leading teams, how do you communicate where we want to go, but also help them break down the steps or keep them focused on the step in front of them so they don't really run away? And you talked a little bit about that in the section talking about counseling and coaching. And I love the fact because I don't think we look at ourselves sometimes as leaders of teams. As a coach, I had the conversation the other day. I said, you manage numbers, you coach people, right? You lead a team. We know where we want to go, but you manage numbers and you coach people. So talk about the difference between counseling and coaching, because I found that very impactful.
In business, we feel like when somebody doesn't do something that they're supposed to do or the way we want them to do it, that we got to go step on their toes.
Mm,
And in a lot of cases, sometimes we do. Sometimes they're for whatever the reason may be, they're not necessarily on task. They're not doing what we need them to do, and sometimes we need to do that.
right,
But more times than not, is they've either promoted themselves, got promoted into a position that they don't know how to do the job, or they never learned how to do the elements. And we come behind them, and whether we're going with KPIs or whatever we're using for metrics to determine whether they're doing a good job or not, and we zap them. This isn't
right,
good enough performance. You're not selling enough cars. You're not doing this. You're not turning enough hours, whatever it may be. And we give them a standard that if you can't do this, you can't work here.
right,
Well, the reality of that is they're doing exactly what they know how to do. And if you don't give them a different path, the only thing they can do is either go out and do less of it because you told them not to do it that way anymore, or go out and do the same thing. There's not a lot to gain from counseling. Now, obviously, if two people get in an argument out there and there's an issue with that, and you're not going to, and both of them have, neither one of them's done anything that you got to release them for, that's a counseling.
right,
But for when it's anything performance related, that's coach. And so it's just like you can tie so many things to sports. There's so many things you can learn from that.
mhm,
So I push our kids into doing those things. And if you look at that from a head coach, look at it from Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Bill Belichick never went out on the field and said, I'll show you how to do it. He coached them to be better. And Tom Brady, as good as he was, still needed a coach, and he still had to practice, even though he was in it for 20 years, still had to do it every single day. And coaching is giving you a different way to look at it. And because in the moment, we may only see what's happening around us, but
Right.
somebody with the outsider's perspective see all the other elements. And then when you can paint that picture to them, it makes it easier to take them down a different path.
Right.
So sometimes it's take them down a different path. Sometimes it's educational. Let me
Right.
show you how to do it differently. Let me show you how to overcome these obstacles that you're running into. And when you do those things, now you're giving them the confidence that you believe that they can be better, and they
Yes.
will go out and push that much harder for you.
No, and I've had that conversation with people who I've worked with or coached or dealerships and companies have brought me in, because it's when someone's not performing well, my first reaction is, if I'm the leader of the team, shame on me. Maybe I didn't educate them well enough, or I have to get involved to see, do they even know what they're supposed to be doing? Is it written down? Going back to sports, where's the
Is it clear?
playbook? Where's
Yeah.
the playbook? Where is it that this person knows here's the steps? Then number two is, well, who trained them to do this? And did anyone train them? And a lot of times, and I'd love your opinion as well, is a lot of times the people who are trainers or coaches don't know how to coach. No one taught them how to coach. And so they're just frustrated because, well, why can't Ed do it the same way I did? It was easy for me. And so there is this disconnect. And I like that idea of going back and coaching. In your example of Bill Belichick, yeah, maybe in practice he walked over and said, now, Tom, you need to be over here. Remember, but when the game's playing, so when you're open for business and it's time for you to perform, the only thing I can do as a coach is watch your performance, take notes on your performance so I can critique, give you feedback. But I think that's a disconnect. I think right there is a gap. And I love your opinion on it. The fact that a lot of times people don't go out to watch the game. They react off the score, so to speak. At the end, they read the box score and go, "Oh, that was a horrible game," and this versus watching. So why don't more managers, leaders of teams get out there and watch what their team is doing, and so that they can help them get better?
Well, we typically repeat what we've learned and what we've watched other people do. And we was only counseled. And so we feel like that's what we have to do going forward.
Right.
But you can tie that to sports, but you can also tie it to parenting. Think about your kids when they started learning how to walk. You didn't go scream at them when they fell over. No, you encouraged them to do better and told them how they
Right.
could do better. We encouraged them. And our people they're still humans. They're just like our kids. And if we treat them the same way and then we become more of, let me show you the path rather than don't
Right.
do that again. Now, more so than them learning to do it or being open to ask questions, you're now approachable, because if you're always only counseling, when they see you coming, they're hiding from you. They're going to pick
Yeah.
up the phone, act like they're on the phone, whether it rang or not. They're going to look like they're busy in hopes of not having
Right.
to make communication with you. But
Well,
on the
because you're
other,
coming at them with criticism in their mind, I think, and it's funny you say that about parenting, because I've said this to a few people. If you think about how we learn, like you said, walking, throwing a ball, bike riding, how to hold a pencil, even in school, teachers showed us what to do. We went up to the board, they watched us, and they showed us what to do. But for some reason, as soon as we turned 18 or we became an adult, the way we teach people is by telling them. And then we're frustrated when they don't do what's in our head. Like, we see what we want Ed to do, Ed's not doing it. And what we do is we just keep talking at them instead of showing. And I wanted to highlight that word, because those of you who are leaders who are listening to this, showing your people and then watching them do it removes a lot of those obstacles.
and think about that, because our audience is mostly automotive, and think about how many times we put somebody on the sales desk because he's a great salesperson. That doesn't mean that they know how to be a manager of people now and pull those same things out. What we
Right.
need them to do is quit selling and do those same things through others. And they don't become that coach just by moving them to the desk.
No, that's that we hear that and that inside automotive and non-automotive, and the people who are outside who listen to this say the same thing. Whatever skills got you to that promotion aren't the skills that are going to help you in that job. But again, I challenge the fact that now that I got promoted, I'm on your team. So it's your job to teach me my new skills, not just go, okay, great, congratulations. But there is such a gap there, especially the higher you move up in any company. They just assume because you were good at one thing there. So that goes back to something else that you said, this idea of delegation. And one of the things that you wrote in here saying that people don't delegate to their teams. They don't build their skills of the team because they're afraid that if I delegate this all out to people, they're not going to need me. So why is it important to delegate to your team and get things off of your plate?
So we have to shift to, when we move into any kind of leadership role, no matter where it's at within a company or organization or startup, we have to shift that we don't do the tasks. We do the tasks through people, because you're going to be in demand. And if you're in demand for whatever the reasons may be, that ball has to keep rolling. And if it only
Right.
happens by you, then there's a loss of production. So every time you're out of the office, you're out doing whatever, whether you have to go to a show or you have to go to a training event or manufacture a deal, things stop. And you come back, and now you got this mountain that you got to climb just to get things back moving again. But really, the place should flow as well without us there as it does with us there. And so if I have tasks that I specifically need to do, well, if I in my absence, they're not getting done. But if I have tasks that I'm just responsible to get done, then somebody else has the accountability to do it, but I'm responsible to make sure that they're doing it.
See,
And
I want to point out that if I have tasks that I have to do, right? If I'm not here, they don't get done, accomplished. But if I'm responsible to make sure those tasks get done, and that's really the key. I believe that. So in your case, you're the chief operating officer, so you have responsibilities. But if you go away on vacation for a week, those things have to be still accomplished. So someone else has to step into the role. So sometimes we as leaders believe we're the role, the title. That's a role. Those are duties that someone in that role has to do. And if you're not there, we have to train somebody to step in and do them, even if it's for a day or two, to your point, or else the machine doesn't keep moving forward. If I have to do everything or my team can't do it without me there, I've created dependencies, then I can never leave. It's really frustrating. I think that's a sign of a weak leader versus a strong leader.
But the person that's living that will tell you they do that because that's what they hired them to do. They feel like that's their responsibility.
Right,
And
right.
let's tie those two together. Let's talk about the coaching and counseling and delegation, because if we tell somebody to go do a task, they may or may not know how to do it, and they may mess it up. And then
Right.
there's justification for not giving it to them again or whatever else. But if we're coaching them, we know what their strengths are. And if we know what their strengths are, we already know before we even pass it out who can handle that best.
Mm,
And when we hand them something that is in their wheelhouse and they can handle with guidance, without guidance, whatever it may be, it raises their level of confidence through the roof. And then the
right.
next time there's that obstacle that comes into play where this is happening or that's happening and you're not around, rather than them pushing the pause button, making it wait until you get there, they take a stab at it and they keep the ball rolling. And more times than not, it's right, because they're already where the information is. We can wait and ask us for whatever, but they're the ones front line. They know more information than we're ever going to know.
Right.
So if they are asking you questions, and this is that visibility piece, if they're asking you questions, that's that's our opportunity to bring them. I want to use the right words here.
Mm,
That's our opportunity to show them that we have the confidence in them that they can overcome those obstacles, and even if they screw it up, that we're not going to zap them.
well,
Let's get you to look at it differently this way. because this is the way
Right.
it worked last time. Now let's take it down a different path. So the next time they still keep going. And the
Well,
idea
you're
is to where
arming
they
them
go.
and you're filling up their tool belt or toolbox or whatever you want to say with options so that it isn't just one way to do it. And I think this is such an important lesson for everyone, because if I'm doing my role, my job, and half of yours, because half of my job has to keep telling you what to do, then my quality of my own work goes down. Where if I actually remove this, empower, like you're saying, if I empower them to handle these tasks, empower them to handle these tasks, I think my core responsibilities get better because I have the time and the mental clarity to focus on what I need to do, because I've trusted my team, I've empowered my team, I've coached my team to make the best attempt at all of these. And like you said, we can always tweak, but they're off and running on their own.
So there's where collaboration comes in. They will show you, they want to show you they can do it better than you, and they'll come with ideas that you didn't have. And that's innovation, that's collaboration. But in addition to that, they will take ownership, and they are
Right.
better placed to grow into that next role. So if you're looking for somebody else to fill another role or whatever else, but then also behind all of that, what you just said a minute ago, when they do it, it creates the flexibility for you to do other things. It creates the flexibility for us to work on the business, not in the business.
Right. You mentioned this word a couple times, so I want to take a step back, because this idea of visibility, right? You as a visible leader, visibility, they have access to you. Because you mentioned it with, they will come to you and ask questions. And so that's that idea of visibility. If you're invisible, meaning you're always in your office, or you have your invisibility cloak around you, meaning I can't go near him, I don't want to disturb him, then they're never going to come and ask for your help. They're not going to approach. So clarify a little more for the listeners. When you say visibility, it just doesn't mean that you're walking around and they oh, there goes Ed. What does that mean to you?
Well, you just touched on the word there. Visual does not necessarily mean that you can be seen.
Hmm.
Visible means that you need to be approachable, and that if they have a question, it's because they don't think they're doing it the best, or maybe they think there's a better way to do it. And if we zap them every time,
Right.
or every time we see them, we're only hitting them with the things they're doing wrong, then all those things get stifled off. And but if every opportunity we say, hey, here's how we can look at it differently, or what do you think? You have more information than I do. What do you think you should do? And almost every time when you ask somebody, what do you think you should do? They already have the answer. They
Right.
just didn't want to give it to you. But when you show them it's okay to have the answer, and then you follow that up with, what are you asking me for? You just built their level of confidence to where they'll go do it and they won't stop next time. So
Right.
that those things build the approachability element to where you're approachable. You're someone that somebody can come to and ask questions to. You don't have to have all the answers, because more times than not, shifting it to, what do you think you should do? They just want the security blanket, so to speak, that they've checked with somebody, that they verified that that's what they need. They already had the answer.
Right.
They're living in the moment. They know what it is. So visual and approachability really ties together. Being visual allows the element of approachability, but you have to build the elements of approachability. But it allows the opportunity for innovation and collaboration to continue to grow.
I love that, because what you just said is innovation. When your team can come to you and say, I was thinking about the way we do this, and I understand why we do it this way, but I was thinking maybe we could do it this way. Or, you know what, I was thinking about this and I'm sort of stuck, Ed. I can make a case for both of these and I need your feedback. That's collaboration. That's respect, but from both sides, that one, they know you're, again, visible, you're approachable, you're going to listen to them and encourage them, and if for some reason you can't, you'll make them understand why, but you're not squashing their thought process. You're not squashing their ideas, because realistically, if you have 20, 30, 50, 100 people or more, you're right. They're on the front lines. The people on the front lines have the best ideas because they're frustrated. There's friction points in their job, but you being able to allow them to come to you, no matter how insignificant they may think it is, or you think it is, that's such a big part of allowing your team to feel part of the solution versus it's all just top down.
So exactly. Let's elaborate on that just a touch more because it's important for the audience to hear this. Sometimes our team members are going to come to us with ideas that makes their job easier. Well, as my friend Tully always says, we're in the repeat and referral business. We are. So sometimes we get in this box of, I could do this easier if we did this. But the end result is the customer may have to go through a few more speed bumps.
Right.
So in all those situations, when you're asking those questions, make sure that the people that we're doing this for, whether it be the customer or vendor or whoever it may be, that they're in mind. And that you may have to shift that conversation to, okay, well, what about this when that happens?
Right.
We got to shift it to putting your customer first always, and then build the process backwards from that, or make the changes accordingly from that.
Yeah, there was a great book that I just finished reading called Unreasonable Hospitality. And the gentleman worked in the restaurant industry. I did as well, so it was very relevant to me. But and it's a phenomenal book. I think everyone should read it. But he made it just what you just said made me flash to it, because he said, my goal is the leader, and he was in very similar position to what you're in. My job is to do what's right for the company. So in this case, for your dealership, I'm 99% of the time, it's also going to work out for you. But there may be a point where we disagree, or we can accommodate everything for you, because ultimately I have to do what's right. In this case, your example, for the customer. So that's my primary initiative. But most of the time we can win over both. We can win on both levels. But I think it's important, though, to make sure they understand why, that you're not just saying, nope, I don't care, because then that it goes against what you're saying is listening, explaining, and coaching. Does just not, no, get out of here. But if you explain why, then they go, okay, they go back and they do it. But maybe that spurs something else where it's a win-win for both.
And use the word friction. Use a word that explains it. Does it add friction? Does it remove friction?
Right.
And you can use efficiency. There's several words you can use, but use something to help explain it, because that's what makes it visual in our people's mind.
Right. Exactly. So since we're both of the gray-haired set, as I've said earlier, and you've been in this business for a long time, and you've seen a lot of changes, but I want to talk more about that idea of coaching and developing people. What has changed over these years? Because, there are going to be some people who say, oh, these kids don't do this in this generation. But I'm sure 30 years ago, 25 years ago, those words, these new kids don't want to work hard. So it's a two-sided. What's changed and what's really still the same in terms of coaching and developing teams?
So the more things change, the more things stay the same, right, Glenn?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you're exactly right. When 30 years ago, people was probably talking about us when we were getting out there. I feel sorry for what's coming up and whatever else.
Yeah.
In today's time, and so focusing on generational differences is huge. And we can talk about them or we can embrace them. And when we embrace them, then we find out what makes people tick. And one of the key things that's happened in the time frame that we've been in this business is these things that came out.
Right.
And that puts information at our people's fingertips.
Oh, absolutely. The phone has changed everything. Well, they're really computers. That's the most amazing thing. They're mini computers.
So before, let's look at a baby boomer. A baby boomer would find a job and work there until he retires, maybe find a second career and work there till he retires again. And because there was a lot of effort that took place in having to go out and find a job.
Right.
To better ourselves, to make ourselves better, and hopefully they trained us better and whatever else. Well, now it's all right here. And there's so many elements that ties into what's here of why our generations are this way. Well, they know that if they better themselves, that they can put themselves in better position going forward. And we have to create the opportunity to where we're fitting in with those generational differences, because they don't want to know that they're going to be doing the same thing 10 years from now. You ask a millennial or Gen Z, what are you going to be doing 10 years from now? Most of them can't answer that question because they don't know, they don't look that far out. But
Right.
if there's a path for constant progression, they will stick with you. And a lot of people say, well, they don't have the same work ethic and they don't do this. Well, Chick-fil-A is full of them, and we all admire them,
Right. Well,
but they have
listen,
a path for them.
when people say that to me, I say, listen, I know 40 and 50-year-olds who are lazy as hell, so I look at it as, instead of doing it vertically by saying this is a baby boomer this age, and whitewashing or stamping a whole generation, because I've sat with people. I have people on my staff who are in their 20s and they don't like being lopped in and bundled into, well, every Gen Z person is lazy. They're going, absolutely not. So I think it's more horizontal. There's always, no matter what age, there's always people who are hardworking. There's people who are going to look for an edge. But to your point, there's more opportunities now for people to, because of the phone, I can train myself, I can study quicker, I can understand things. There's now ways to make money sitting at home. And so that idea, like you were saying, when we were starting out, we had to go somewhere, we had to apply for a job. And if you had to commute and drive for 45 minutes or an hour, but it was a good job with a good longevity to a career, well, then you just sucked it up and you did that. Where now, but I think it's, everyone wants to blame someone else. But to your point is, I think everybody, this I think is so much the same. Everybody wanted a career path. Why you worked at, where I am in New Jersey, people, when I was in high school, people wanted to go work for AT&T or Bell Labs. Why? Because there was a career path, and you could, if you worked hard, you could eventually be a manager and you could be a VP. But they didn't throw VP titles until you were in your 50s, but they moved you along. So why can't you do that now? I think a lot of people, if they knew that here's stage one and here's stage two, and if you hit this stage, this is what you need to do on your side to accomplish this, and then you get, I think more people would stay. But right now, I think most people look at automotive and go, well, it's only sales. And you're going, there is so much more to this industry that's open for people. It's an amazing industry. And I just think we do sometimes, as leaders, do a horrible job of communicating that career path.
You just stated it, and I'll sum it up for what you just stated. They've always been hungry. We just didn't provide the path, so that hasn't changed. What has changed is we must provide that path if we want to keep them.
Right.
And so a lot of us are doing more with creating career paths. And here we do Bozard University, but our turnover rate here is less than 5% a year. And that's phenomenal for any industry, much less the automotive. But
Right.
that's because we have a path, and 60% of our staff are millennials or younger. But they all know what tomorrow looks like. They know that if they position themselves here, they can go here. Or if they want to take a different path, they know what they got to do to prepare themselves. And when you do those things, these guys, they're more creative than we ever was. Why? Because they have more information than we ever had.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They have the information. They're technologically faster and smarter than we ever were. And why not leverage that? And I love hearing that, because I have a couple clients, automotive dealers, who built that same framework because they were frustrated with the turnover, or they were frustrated that someone had a good month in performance and came and said, well, I want to raise, or I want to be a manager. And he said, what if I mapped all of this out? Then it's no longer, oh, Ed doesn't want to promote me because he doesn't like me. It's, well, no, in order to to move to this level, you need to have achieved this, or you need to pass this. And well, I love the fact that you're creating an educational university where you can say, well, you need to take these courses and pass this and be in this position for this long. Once you have clarity, then people will work hard. It's the absence of clarity. If you don't, and I think you said it in here in one of your, if you don't explain it to someone, they're gonna write their own story. And then
Exactly.
you're gonna get frustrated that the stories don't match.
And we expect them to. And a friend of mine, the same guy that inspired me to write a book, said, don't ever think something's implied. He says, if you think it's implied, it's worth stating, because everybody's interpretation is going to be different than what we think how we think they're going to interpret it. So don't feel like, well, they know that that's kind of implied. No, it's worth stating. If you think it's implied, it's worth stating. And he's very valid on that.
I love that one. And there was a discussion this morning on the Clubhouse app. Someone was talking about that, saying it was some manager said, we took a step back and we assumed that our team knew what we were talking about. So we took the time to go sit there and block out everything else except the mile one, what's right in front of me. And we watched to make sure that they knew what they were doing. They were executing at a high level versus, well, Ed's been in the business for so long, or he's been in this position for so long, and he should know. We'll assume he knows. And then again, that's where those blow-ups happen, where because how did you not know this? I thought you knew this, versus, well, isn't that your job to go make sure Ed knows what he's doing? I think that's such a key. I got I think you sort of answered it, but I want to hear from you. So did Bozard set a career path for you, because you've been there for a good amount of time? Because as your point is, people perceive automotive to be a transitory job. So what about this organization really clicked with you to have you invest your life, a good portion of your life, and move up?
I would say 100% is clarity of alignment of values. And the it's amazing how history repeats itself. I got in this business homeless and was told no at a few places, and finally somebody told me yes. I'll give you a chance. And that's all I needed was that opportunity. And within this organization, this is third generation. There was a bridge owner between second generation and third generation simply because of illness. Well, the same guy that owned that store that gave me a chance to begin with was that bridge owner here. And he owned the store during that period of time that I came here.
Mm-hmm.
We already aligned. I looked up to him as being someone that almost a god, so to speak, because he allowed me the opportunity to get out of where I was at.
Right.
And over those years, we very much aligned. And when the opportunity became available to come here, I already knew that we was going to be aligned on what the vision and values are. And when you do that and you get everybody rowing in the same direction, the ride's fun. And when the ride's fun, there ain't no other place to be.
Right.
We've never arrived. We're on a journey, and we may be the number one service center for Ford, maybe this, or maybe be that. But what we're not number one in, we're not number one yet. So I use that word a lot. So I'm not the number one volume Ford dealer yet. We're top
Right.
10, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're going to be. And if you focus on opportunities, even if it's things that are going right, there's still some opportunities there to do better. If you focus on opportunities, you're always going forward. And that's a fun ride. And here at this store, we've always aligned, and it's a fun ride to go. I mean, let's face it, I was a 43rd employee when I started here 11 years ago. I have 338 employees today. And we sold 50 cars a month then. We sell 800 cars a month now. But we're not where we want to be yet.
I love that. I love that. And that's such a great place to sort of land on here. So again, I want to thank you. I got a couple just random questions. I call them the one, and then I wrap up every episode. So I first off, I could sit here and chat with you forever. This is you and I see things very similarly. And like I said, when I started reading this book, that's why I was so encouraged to get you on, because I think the way you explain your clarity, your vision, and then to your story to take from, where you guys started to where you are now, and yet I think that's really great. So I appreciate your time today, and I know the audience is going to get great value. So I usually ask questions called the one. So you wrote this book, and you've obviously there would be things that have inspired you. What are you reading, listening to, or watching that is inspiring you right now?
Right now, it's a book by Jesse Cole, and it's Fans First. And you talk about removing friction. I think we do a good job of removing friction. He removes friction at a level 100 times greater than we do.
Is that the Savannah Bananas?
It certainly is, yes.
There he goes. Okay.
That's a very good book to read.
I'll link that up there. Yeah, I know he was just spoke at a SodaCon, Paul and Kyle's event, and he's what he's done is just amazing. So I love that. What's one thing you're working on personally for you that a year from now you're going to look back and go, that was a good investment of my time?
I will speak that from a 30,000 foot view because I'm not ready to let that out yet. But
Okay.
we are the #1 service center for Ford in the country, #1 quick lane, #1 tire retailer, and that drives so much. We are working on something that is so innovative, it will double what we do in the service business if it pans out. Now, a year from now, I may say that was a train wreck. But we spend so much time focusing on the buying experience, which lasts hours, days, weeks, sometimes months, but so little time focusing on the ownership experience, which usually always lasts years. And this is what we're hoping to raise that ownership experience level to a unsurpassed level thus far and help us get to that #1 volume Ford dealer.
Great. So keep your eyes open. I'm excited to hear about that. Lastly, we talked about a lot of things. As I said, I highly recommend everyone getting Mile 1. Please do. I'll make sure everything's tied into the show notes. But if there was one thing that you hope the audience, the listeners, take away from this episode, what's that one thing?
That we never arrive, that we as leaders or managers, we're ongoing learners. And whether you get something from my book or something else, never feel like you've been there, done that. You don't need to continue to grow. We always, no matter whether it's personalized, professionalized, we always need to continue to grow. And wherever you get that fuel from, fuel up as often as you can and keep growing.
I love that. Love that. So how can listeners connect with you? Where can they get your book, and where can they connect with you? Folks, I would definitely connect with Ed. He is definitely someone who is worth connecting and asking questions.
So the book is available on Amazon. It's also available on my website, mile1leadership.com. If you order it from my website, I will sign it and send it to you. If you order it from Amazon, they'll just send it to you.
Yeah.
But you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm not blocked on anything, so everything is open. Whether you connect with me or not, you can still see everything I do. But don't be afraid to reach out. My cell number is on LinkedIn. I'm easily accessible. The only people I don't talk to are the people that don't reach out and try to connect with me. So don't hesitate.
That's a great one. And like I said, I'll put all of his contact information in the show notes. So again, thank you so much. This has been phenomenal. Audience, you know the drill. Just hang on for a couple seconds. We're going to read out, and we have a couple things to share with you there. But again, Ed, thank you so much. I look forward to crossing paths soon, spend a little time with you, and appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Glenn.